Okay, let's get into this. Have you ever had one of those like really awful stomach bugs? Knocks you out for a day or two.
Oh, yeah. Awful.
Right. You're miserable, maybe eating dry toast. Okay, now imagine that, but like 1,000 times worse. Constant hunger, and maybe it's, something deadly.
A very different baseline for feeling unwell.
Exactly. Because today, we're taking a deep dive way back into medieval times. We're using historical accounts to figure out what just getting through the day was like for most people.
And the aim here is really to appreciate how different our world is now.
Mhm.
Maybe get some perspective on the comforts we just expect.
Yeah, the things we totally take for granted.
It's interesting, too, because we often picture medieval life through, movies, knights, big feasts.
Totally. King Arthur stuff?
Right. And while, sure, that existed for the absolute elite, the tiny minority, for almost everyone else,
Yeah.
it was completely different.
So that's what we're digging into. The everyday grind, the less glamorous side, the real challenges of just surviving.
Precisely. Forget those images of massive banquets, at least for the average person.
Okay, so what were they eating then, if not giant turkey legs?
Well, the staple for your average peasant was probably something called pottage.
Pottage, okay.
And it's not like a hearty stew. Think more. Thin, watery soup made with whatever vegetables they could get their hands on.
Whatever was around.
Exactly. And here's a detail. It was often kept cooking in the same pot for days, just adding bits to it.
Oh, wow. Like a perpetual stew?
Sort of, yeah. And, things could fall in, weevils, dirt. Probably wasn't the most hygienic process.
Okay, so the food supply was precarious.
Extremely. No nipping to the shops. It all depended on the harvest, and even then, the quality. Well, take bread.
A basic, right. Everyone ate bread.
Absolutely. But it wasn't our fluffy white loaf. This was dense, dark bread, and often gritty.
Greedy, why?
And the grinding stones. Little chips of stone would get into the flour. Actually, medieval skeletons often show really worn-down teeth because of this.
Wow. Okay, that's a detail.
No,
The
no.
teeth had to be tougher.
Their whole bodies did, really, adapting constantly. But the bread story gets a bit darker.
Oh, how so?
A lot of the rye bread could be contaminated with ergot.
Ergot. What's that?
It's a fungus. Grows on rye. And the effects, well, they could be terrifying. Hallucinations, burning sensations. People died from it.
Hallucinations. From bread.
Yeah. It's actually pretty potent stuff. Some historians even think ergot poisoning might be linked to some of the witch hunt crazes. Imagine a whole village suffering those symptoms.
Whoa. Okay, that's wild. Bad bread potentially fueling witch hunts.
It's a theory, but it shows the kind of hidden dangers they faced. Food could literally poison you in unexpected ways.
So dodgy bread. What about meat? Was that common?
Not really. A real luxury for most, and when they did get it, preservation was the big issue. No fridges, remember?
Right, so it went bad quickly.
Very. They were often eating meat. That was,
Yeah.
well, let's just say past its best.
Oh, lovely.
So they'd use loads of strong spices, if they could afford them, to try and mask the taste, the smell.
Cover up.
Pretty much. Or just hold your nose and chew, I suppose.
Okay, so questionable food. What about water? Surely they could just drink water.
Well, that was another problem. Most water sources, rivers, wells, they were often heavily contaminated.
Contaminated with what?
Mostly human and animal waste.
Yeah.
Sewage, basically. Drinking it was a massive risk.
Good grief. So what did they drink?
This is where it gets interesting. They drank ale, or a weak beer.
Ale, like alcohol. All the
That
time.
was generally much weaker than modern beer, but yes. The brewing process actually killed off a lot of the dangerous bacteria in the water, so it was safer than drinking water straight.
Safer to drink beer than water.
Yeah.
Wow. How much did they drink?
Records suggest adults might have drunk something like 8 pints a day on average.
8 pints. Even children.
Children too, yes, though probably weaker versions. It was the main source of hydration for many. It's just staggering compared to our focus on drinking plain water, isn't it?
Completely staggering. Okay, so ale was the main drink. Any other options? Fish, maybe?
Fish was more common than meat, especially near coasts or rivers. But again, preservation was key, especially inland.
So not fresh fish, usually.
Mostly dried or heavily salted fish,
Yeah.
which, drastically changes the taste and texture.
Right. So the typical meal, gritty bread, maybe dodgy meat, loads of weak ale.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? A very different culinary world.
Definitely. And speaking of unpleasant daily realities, sanitation. Hygiene. I'm guessing that wasn't great either.
Yeah, it's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Forget modern bathrooms. The average person had a chamber pot.
Like a bucket.
Essentially, yes.
Yeah.
Often kept under the bed. And when it was,
Let me guess. Out the window.
you got it, straight out the window into the street below.
Yo, serious.
Seriously. Apparently, you'd sometimes hear people shout, "Gardy Lou."
Yeah.
It comes from the French for watch out for the water as a warning before they tipped it out.
Charming. So the streets must have been disgusting.
Unbelievably so, especially in towns and cities. Just open sewers, waste everywhere.
Yeah.
Some cities tried to regulate it, like only allowing dumping at night, but
It didn't really solve the root problem, did it?
not at all. Even castles weren't much better. They had things called garderobes.
Garderobes.
Basically, a toilet seat built into the wall, overhanging the outside. Waste just drops straight down. Sometimes, like at Dover Castle, it was a 70-foot drop.
70 feet. Okay. And
Yeah.
public toilets.
Very rare. Maybe a few communal privies built over rivers.
Yeah.
But mostly, you just found a spot, I suppose. Or used the open sewers.
Crim. Was there anyone who cleaned this stuff up?
There were people called gong farmers. Their job was to empty out the cesspits, usually at night.
Gong farmers. What a job title. Must have been awful work.
Truly disgusting, incredibly smelly. But interestingly, they were paid relatively well, much more than a standard laborer.
I suppose someone had to do it. But still, the overall smell of a medieval city.
Must have been overpowering. Accounts of the River Thames in London talk about the stench being just legendary in a tad way.
I can only imagine. And toilet paper. What did they use?
Not Charmin, that's for sure. Leaves, moss, maybe hay. Sometimes just your hand, frankly.
Their hand.
The left hand, traditionally in many cultures, wealthier people might have used scraps of wool or hemp. It's funny, the Romans had sponges on sticks,
Oh, yeah, I've heard about those.
but that knowledge seems to have been lost, mostly in Western Europe during this period.
So basic hygiene really took a nosedive. What about bathing?
Very infrequent. Maybe a few times a year for many people.
A year? Why so rarely?
There was actually a belief that bathing opened up the pores in your skin and let diseases in.
You're kidding. They thought washing was bad for you.
As strange as it sounds, yes. So people could go months without a proper wash.
Months. The itchiness alone.
Exactly. And predictably, lice were incredibly common. Everywhere.
Oh, lovely.
They actually had special fine-toothed combs just for getting lice out.
Yeah.
There's a bit of dark humor suggesting a medieval dating profile might boast about having only moderate lice infestation.
Okay, that's grimly funny. A selling point.
It just highlights the different standards, doesn't it? And it wasn't just skin. Clothing, too. Rough linen, itchy wool.
Uncomfortable.
Very. And rarely washed. People usually only had 1 or 2 sets of clothes, worn until they fell apart. Shoes were often poor quality, too.
So just constant low-level discomfort. Itchy, smelly.
Pretty much sums it up. It's not just the big historical events, it's these everyday realities, these constant irritations and lack of basic comfort that really defined life for most.
Which leads us neatly into work and health, I suppose.
Yeah.
Which I'm guessing were also pretty tough.
Brutal is probably the word.
Hmm.
For the average peasant, life was just relentless physical labor. Dawn till dusk.
What kind of work? Farming mostly.
Yeah, farming land owned by a lord, plowing with oxen and basic wooden plows, sowing seed by hand, harvesting with sickles. Incredibly hard work.
Long hours.
Extremely. During harvest, they could be working 16-hour days, burning maybe 4,000 calories or more.
Wow. Just staying alive was a workout.
Absolutely. And remember, on that diet we discussed earlier, poor nutrition, constant hard labor. It took a huge toll.
What about other jobs? Tradespeople?
Still tough. Think about a blacksmith. Constant smoke, fumes, the heat, risk of burns.
Or tanners?
Tanners, what do they do?
They treated animal hides to make leather, using really nasty stuff like urine and toxic chemicals. The smell was appalling, apparently. Stained their skin.
Okay, not glamorous. And how did you learn a trade?
You started young, really young. Apprenticeships often began around age 7.
7.
Yes. Sent off to live with a master craftsman, working for them for maybe up to 14 years, 6, sometimes 7 days a week.
That's not childhood as we know it?
Not even close. And for the very poorest, there were jobs like link boys, kids carrying torches at night to light the way for people, or pure finders.
Pure finders, what's that?
They collected dog dung, pure, to sell to tanneries.
Oh my goodness, collecting dog poo for a living? Yeah. And the pay for these bottom-rung jobs was minuscule. A few pennies a day. Just enough for basic bread, maybe. There was no concept of a minimum living wage. It was minimum survival.
Survival, that seems to be the key word.
It really is. And with those conditions, Hard labor, poor food, terrible sanitation. It's no surprise health was fragile.
Life expectancy must have been low.
Tragically low. Average maybe 30 to 40 years.
Hmm.
And child mortality was horrific. Maybe 30%, a third of children died before they reached age 5.
30%. That's just devastating.
The diseases we barely worry about now, flu, infections could easily be fatal then.
And medical help was limited.
Limited and often dangerous.
Mm.
Medieval medicine was based on ideas that seem completely bizarre to us, like bad air causing illness or the four humors needing to be balanced.
Four humors: blood, phlegm.
Exactly. Blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. If they thought you had too much bad blood causing a fever, the treatment was bloodletting.
Literally draining blood.
Yes. Cut open a vein, or use leeches, sometimes dozens of leeches at once.
Leeches. Did any of it work?
Rarely, and often made things worse. Some prescribed medicines were actually poisons. Mercury was a common one.
They gave people mercury.
Frighteningly, yes. Their understanding of germs and hygiene was practically non-existent. No effective hand washing, so infection spread like wildfire.
And dental care.
Forget it. Tooth decay, abscesses, infections. Really common and incredibly painful, potentially deadly too.
And then there was the big one, the plague.
The Black Death, yeah. Absolutely catastrophic. Wiped out maybe half the population of Europe in the 14th century. Hard to even comprehend that scale of death.
Half the population. It really puts things in perspective.
It's just a completely different world. The sheer fragility of life, the constant struggle. It makes you realize how much has changed.
Absolutely. So thinking back to that minor annoyance we started with, that 2-day stomach bug, the slow Wi-Fi.
It seems rather trivial now, doesn't it?
Completely. When you compare it to the daily medieval reality, uncertain food, constant filth, backbreaking work, pervasive disease, it really it reframes everything.
It does. This whole deep dive, I think, highlights the incredible progress we've made. And maybe fosters a bit more appreciation for the simple things. Clean water, enough food, basic safety.
And the resilience of the people back then, too, just to endure it.
Absolutely. Their perseverance was remarkable.
So after hearing all this, what's one modern convenience you think you'll look at differently now? For me, it might just be turning on the tap for clean water.
That's a good one. For me, maybe just soap and the ability to wash frequently without thinking it'll kill me.
Definitely. Well, this has been eye-opening. Follow us for more deep dives into fascinating bits of history and maybe some surprising perspective.